Hello, my name is Kate McMahon, and thanks for joining us today. I'm very excited. We have some of the leadership from the town of Yarmouth visiting to talk about Town Meeting 2022. So let me introduce my guests. First, I'd like to start with Bob Rittenauer. Bob is the town administrator. And then we have Bill Scott, the assistant town administrator, and Jeff Colby, DPW director. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having us, Kate. It's great to get out in the community and meet some folks.
We're really looking forward to this conversation. There's some great things to highlight. Before we get started on some of these highlights, could you just take a couple minutes and explain how a town meeting works?
Yes, town meeting, that venerable New England tradition where once a year, and we actually do it twice a year, all of the residents of the community are invited into one big room where we make all of the major decisions facing the community for that year. Any funds that are going to be expended, any local laws that we're passing. It's really quite interesting. We call it the legislative body of our local government. So in that respect, you can see it as every resident in the town gets to be a senator for a day and having the legislature pass all the laws for the town, and all of the officials, whether appointed or elected, we don't move without first checking in with the local residents and making sure that there's a strong appetite for any of the spending or initiatives. And I'll tell you that we've sort of taken our town meeting process, we've learned a little bit for granted, having the opportunity to gather all of the registered voters in one place. The last couple of years, it's been a very dangerous situation in the midst of a pandemic. We've seen town meetings canceled, postponed. We're not allowed to do them virtually, although we're all Zoom experts at this time, but there was a lot of social distancing, a lot of consternation and fear surrounding those. So we're happy this year that we've really followed those community transmission rates of COVID-19 very, very closely. And we're lucky our town meeting is coming at a time where we're very much at a lull for the transmission rates. I think we're down to 3% at this point, and I know there's a lot of talk in the press about a potential new spike coming with new variants, and that fear is always out there. So we're monitoring the situation using our health department very carefully, and we'll have some safeguards in place at the town meeting, but we're happy to announce that we're able this year to safely gather the local residents to vote on the town's affairs. So we're very happy to be back in town meeting mode, so to speak.
Yeah, and being in person is it's great. I personally think people are more engaged when it's in person too. So that's wonderful.
And there's always that hurricane last fall, so.
Yeah, when you get a hurricane on town meeting, that happened, and we had to postpone for what,
Right.
Another week?
Another week.
Boy, yeah.
It's been an interesting couple of years.
Jeff's still cleaning up the brush from that one.
Absolutely.
So it looks like the budget is coming together very nicely, balanced this year with no need for an override. That's congratulations. And I also understand that the communications between the town and the regional school are going quite well now. And can you just share a little bit about how the finances came together this year for the town?
Well, thank you for mentioning the budget. That is, something that we spend extraordinary amount of time doing. And as folks know, this is my first year as the town administrator here in Yarmouth, although thankfully, I've had experience in a number of other communities. And here in Yarmouth, I'll tell you, the budget, it's just like the issues that we talked about with town meeting, really can't be taken for granted that we are in a very transitional year this year, emerging from the pandemic. And in addition to bringing us to our knees, everyone knows the impacts that we've had, what it's done to the economy. The pandemic was responsible for our losing, at one point at its height, maybe 10% of the local non-property tax revenues that we have to deal with. That created some tremendous difficulties throughout 2021 with the budget. As we enter into 2023, thankfully, with the economy rebounding, although we've been hit with some pretty steep inflation, we're seeing some of the revenues that we use to fuel that town government and all of our program of services returning slowly. So what we've seen is that 10% loss in revenues has rebounded a little bit. And so some of the areas that we had to cut the budget in the last 2 years, we're able to slowly restore. And I think another issue that really helped this year, over at the school department, working with the superintendent and their new assistant superintendent, we've been able to have very strong communications. We're extremely fortunate that they're able to present their program of services with increases that are within the Proposition 2.5 levels. So I think together, working with all of the town departments and also our great finance team with Ed Centio, the finance director in Yarmouth, we've put together a program of services that is affordable to local residents, doesn't require any major tax increases, and funds every service all the way from the police, DPW, over to education. And, we're also looking ahead of the horizon a little bit. We see some key areas where we need to increase spending so that we can meet the service demands. Our community continues to grow, but we feel if we continue to work together, analyzing very closely the amount of revenues that we have, we're going to be able to be a sustainable organization and keep the services very high. And I hope that the local residents really notice what we're trying to achieve to keep things affordable, but also move forward with the times and meet all of the new challenges that we have.
That's wonderful. Excuse me. Bill, can we talk a little bit about the entire process for the capital needs that the town has? What is the process, and then how does that budget come together for the town?
Sure. We have a great group of people in the Capital Budget Committee, which are appointed volunteers, many of them being on the committee for several years. And they take in applications from the department heads on various capital needs. And those capital needs are parsed out over a 5-year period, and then larger capital needs, buildings, things like that, over a 10-year period. And the key to it is the prioritization by this group. They're less involved in some of the financial issues that we put together, and more involved in looking at issues of safety, timeliness, use of other funds, and they then prioritize. So Article 12 is probably the best article. It's various departments' capital, and that article is sequenced by sort of those priorities. But what it does is it shows that with some of the things that Bob had indicated in terms of, the budget, we had some availability to move down the list a little bit further and capture some pent-up needs. So there were things on that list that from Public Works and others that have been there for years. And so we wanted to see how far down the list we could go in that priority list to fund them. And the great thing is when you see departments looking that 5-year out, you look at the water department, they're very proactive in establishing, one program after another that gets in front of some of their capital needs. The fire department does an excellent job, and police department also in finding other money in their capital work. They look for grant money and things like that. So after that sort of prioritization, it's a matter of putting it in place in the 5 and the 10-year plan. This year we looked at some areas we might be able to improve in terms of the process, and the CBC was very willing to have those discussions. So next year, from the perspective of reducing redundancy in spreadsheets and narrative, we're going to try to go a little bit more digital and make it a little bit better and easier for the departments and the committee. But I think it went very well this year to the extent that funding was available. And there is one item in there that was a road authorization, I think, that's put been put back in that was authorized years ago. That's going to be, put back into the roadway program so that we have a roadway program that comes in line with Chapter 90, which is the state program, to create a more robust roadway program. So capital went well. I think that what we're going to look at is each year self-evaluate and improve so that we can, get to a point where we're proactive. To the point of fire department and police and others, we're going to try as much as possible to look for somebody else's money is really the phrase. Get ahead of the game and look, can we apply this to grants? Can we apply this to CPA, CEDC, and things like that? So we're going to start earlier and try to look for that so by the time we get there. And then there is a lot of somebody else's money, and a lot of it, the police firearms trailer is 50% donations. So they spend a lot of work on getting that moving forward at less of an impact to the taxpayer.
That's great. That's really great.
Right.
Now, you mentioned roadways. Does that have anything to do with the project that's going to happen on 6A in town?
It's a little bit different program. The Route 6A project is a water main replacement project that's funded through water funds. The road projects that Bill was referring to are other town roads, 6A being a Mass DOT state road. Right. So it's a little bit different, but it does present some good opportunities. That's the real nice thing about that project, one we've been looking forward to for a while. This $3.8 million will allow us to finish the design plans and construct replace a water main, a very aging water main that's roughly from the Barnstable town line on Route 6A. It's roughly West Yarmouth Road. It is one of our older water mains in town. Water was developed in 1928 in Yarmouth, and so this water main dates back to the 30s. And so it's a very older water main. We have a history of water main breaks and leaks there. There's a lack of other infrastructure such as isolation valves for when there are issues or we need to connect a new service. And so this will allow us to modernize that infrastructure, and we're really looking forward to it.
That sounds great. And is there going to be any opportunities for making the area more pedestrian friendly or adding any parking?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we excavate the road and put the below ground infrastructure in, when we repave the road or repair that area of excavation, there's good opportunities to improve some amount of curbing or berms along the side of the road, or even flow path for water. Sidewalks in some cases will have to be crossed with some of that infrastructure that can be repaved. So this is a good opportunity to address some of those needs within the community. So we have been engaging with the community to see what are the appropriate steps to take when we put the road back together and how we can improve those things.
Great. Let's see. It seems that almost in all towns we're seeing more and more attention placed on wastewater. And I'm sure the town of Yarmouth residents are interested in what the town is doing going forward. Bill and Jeff, would you like to give us some insight there?
Sure. I could start by saying what we're doing currently. And currently the town of Yarmouth has our treatment facility as well as all of our collection system pipes within our first phase. The design work is fully funded, and we're underway now in order to do that work. So that's a great opportunity for the town of Yarmouth. That first phase, at least for the collection system, is roughly that Route 28 corridor from the Barnstable town line to the Dennis town line. There are some side roads that are connected as well, but that's our primary commercial corridor, and presents some really good opportunities for us with wastewater. We're working towards a filing with the state revolving fund in August of this year, 2022, and that will allow us to be positioned for state as well as some federal funds and funding opportunities.
Sounds great.
From the funding perspective, what we're looking at is, I guess the best way to put it is implementation mode, in the sense that in the fall town meeting, an enterprise account was established for sewer, and that allows you to deposit funds into it for both capital and operations eventually. So that's really the first step. The stabilization account is being established at this town meeting, and what that does is it allows you to deposit funds associated with, there's several sort of columns in the funding plan, and there's an early version of it in 2019, the Wastewater Resources Advisory Committee and the then Assistant Town Administrator put together sort of a financing package that has several columns funding the note, and they had both DHY and Y as a comparison. And key to this is that in August of 2021, there was a shift to just Yarmouth. And, you know, the work that Jeff has done and others to sort of accommodate that shift has been pretty rapid, so that to get a design funding in the fall for the treatment plant itself, to put together the enterprise account, to put together the stabilization account, that shift from DHY to Y has meant that we're sort of shifting the entire sort of paradigm. So the stabilization account will allow us to start depositing money in from some of those sources as we engage them. And then the other possibility is the DIF, and that's District Improvement Financing. So in that same report in 2019, they were looking at taking new growth and assigning it to pay off the debt. So there are multiple methods. It did mention in the report the DIF. The DIF is really, it's Chapter 40Q and the Mass Laws, the mechanism in which you take the new growth associated with the sewer line in a sense that businesses grow, and then you apply it to the note. And the important thing about that is it allows us to make adjustments and betterments in user rates because the diff or the new growth is providing us the revenue. So our goal is to try to reduce some of the impacts in betterments and user rates by using these other funding sources. So, I mean, I think the major change was in August, which we went to Y, Yarmouth-centric project. And then as a result, it allowed us to sort of hit an implementation mode in a lot of these funding approaches.
Awesome. And I also think you're involved in a project to take a look at the town seal. And I was wondering if Bob's gonna take
Bob's project.
and what the goal of this working group is going to be.
Oh, yes, I'd love to address that one. A very fascinating question that you've hit upon. And first of all, I think it relates, generally to the growing sense of social consciousness throughout our nation. You see it across the country with an examination of the symbols that we have, statues, seals, things of that nature. And, we've even seen that in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with an analysis of the state seal. And of course, it's reached Cape Cod recently. I think the town of Mashpee has adopted a new seal following, some real self-reflection around their former seal. And here in Yarmouth, it's a repeat of the same situation. We have perhaps one of the most historic communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts here on Cape Cod, and there's a very old seal that everyone is proud of. It is an homage to the Native American community that predates the white settlement and depicts Native American imagery. Now, of course, in recent years, our historical commission has analyzed that seal from a real socially conscious viewpoint, and they've determined that there are historical inaccuracies associated with the town seal. The depiction of the Native American housing is not the same type of Native American housing that folks had. The difference between the pointed teepee structure versus a wetu, which is the rounded structure, and other inconsistencies with historical accuracy. And I think that that's the key issue. Folks are really proud of the Native American heritage that we have here on Cape Cod, and specifically in Yarmouth. And so the Board of Selectmen, having met with the Historical Commission, I think really took to heart some of those issues and the potential inaccuracies, and they wanted to bring it in front of the community. And the Historical Commission had requested that we establish a working group that would take a look closely at that imagery, involve some Native American authorities and the community, and analyze the feasibility of making it more accurate. And I think at the end of the day, we'll probably see a very valuable study, and any work that comes out of that will help to strengthen the symbols and the seals that we use, to represent our community, I think in a very prideful way. So it's kind of interesting when the issue comes up, some folks, from a traditional, it's a very visceral type of issue, say, no, our seal is beautiful, and it is a beautiful seal. And I think that as we go through the process to ensure that it's historically accurate, I think what we'll see is more and more people gather around that point, so that if there are any adjustments that potentially are made, that we'll wind up with the type of imagery that we can all be proud of. And so again, it's not inconsistent with what we see all around us, and it's kind of fascinating to see it come right here to our own hometown. And I'm really anxious to see how the process unfolds, and that dialogue, I think, will do nothing but make us a stronger community.
I agree. And I think it's great that you're actually looking at that and making a very thoughtful process out of it. So is there anything else that you would like to mention before we wrap up today?
Well, I think folks need to know, with this town meeting that we talk about, it has a date and a time, April 26, 6 p.m., over at the Mattakees Middle School. I believe that's 400 Higgins Kroll Road here in lovely, historic Yarmouth, Massachusetts. I know the Board of Selectmen has worked very hard these past months in putting together, I think there's 30 or so individual articles that voters will vote upon. And we look to be in the Glimmer team to present that information, and the Board of Selectmen will be right there, and we'll be answering everyone's questions. And I really, though, appreciate, the opportunity to get the word out there and generate some public interest around it, because without the local voters and residents coming out to hit us with hard questions, tell us no when we need to be told no, and to support the initiatives that they want to see, that's how we know we're going in the right direction. So we really feed upon that public scrutiny, and we invite it. So
Great. That feedback is very important. Very important. Now, where can the viewers find a copy of the warrant?
Well, we have a special town homepage for the annual town meeting, and we've already got the town meeting warrant posted on that. It's on yarmouth.ma.us. Look for town meeting, and we'll be also printing out booklets that will be available immediately before the town meeting. They'll be at Town Hall, but we're going to hand them out right at town meeting, so folks can jump online, take a look at the warrant, go through it, but know that we'll have hard copies for you at the meeting, and we'll walk through every issue. And also, I want to say, folks can contact me personally. I'm r.rittenhour@yarmouth.ma.us. Any questions, concerns about town meeting? I love to get the feedback and respond to citizen concerns and issues. So just know the door's always open at Town Hall, and we try to get as much fresh air in there as possible. So don't hesitate to call or contact me.
Yeah, that's great. You guys are so accessible. So thank you so much for coming in. Best of luck at the end of the month. Thanks again.
Well, thank you,
you.
Kate.
And thanks for joining us. I'm Kate McMahon.